So Brian, this is all you. You and I have spoken about this. I know that this topic interests you because you found it to just be so out there and terrifying. And obviously it relates to tonight's card. So go for it.
Yeah, so this is about Anthony Smith, and this is actually not a brand new story, but I think it's getting some more light now because he's fighting tonight. Right. But Anthony Smith, this was a month ago, about a month ago. He says he was at home, and his wife wakes him up in the middle of the night and says somebody's in the house. And so he told this whole story. He told to Ariel Helwani, talking on ESPN. It was literally less than 48 hours after the incident. His voice was still gravelly from yelling during this encounter. And he said his wife wakes him up and says somebody's in the house. And he said he wakes up and there's literally a man in his house screaming to the top of his lungs. So he said he walks out out of his bedroom and he sees the guy standing like in a computer room, standing there with an odd posture, flexing at him and yelling until he loses his breath, gets his breath back and starts yelling more. And he was like, he saw the guy starts walking towards him. And he said at that moment, now, for anybody who's not familiar with Anthony Smith, this is Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith is 6'4", 205 pounds on weigh-in night. So which means it's probably more like 235, 240. And so this is not a little guy.
Right.
Okay.
Very imposing figure.
Yeah. And this is not a guy who.
And he's a trained fighter.
He's a trained fighter.
Sorry, you're between the rounds.
And a trained fighter on the highest level.
Yes.
You know, because I mentioned he fought John Jones last year. You don't fight John Jones unless you have already proven that you are an elite fighter. Right. So he says he's terrified, literally. And he's looking at this guy. He says the guy's like 5'10", 160, 170 pounds. But he's thinking to himself, nobody breaks into somebody's house at night with nothing but their hands. So he says he's thinking, I'm going to get stabbed, I'm going to get shot. Something's going to happen at some point before I get to this guy. He said, but I figure with 2 minutes, you get about 2 minutes of adrenaline unless you get a shot in the head or something. And I got to do this to protect my family. Now, in his house, he's got his wife, 3 daughters, aged 8, 5, and 2, and his mother-in-law. So, and the crazy thing was he was supposed to be gone that night. He was supposed to be gone. And so he charges at the guy, knocks him down, and he's fighting this guy. He says, I am giving this guy everything I've been trained to give him. Punches, kicks, knees. I'm using all jiu-jitsu to hold him down. He said this dude was so strong. He'd never, ever felt or dealt with a guy, wrestling a guy. He said he just, no matter how much he beat him and kicked him, beat him, he could not stop him. He could not control him. And so, you know, his wife got the kids and hit him and everything, and he's just beating him. At one point, his wife held the guy's legs down, and he told the guy, he said, "Do not kick my wife." And he said, and the dude just stopped and looked really calm at him and said, "I won't," and then stopped kicking his legs, but kept fighting from the waist up. And so ultimately, he somewhat gets the guy subdued. He said all of this whole process took 5 to 7 minutes before the police ended up coming to.
Only?
Right. 5 to 7 minutes is an eternity in that kind of a situation. It's an eternity. And so it was crazy, but 5 to 7 minutes, if depending on what neighborhood you in, sound like a really quick response to a 911 call, depending on what neighborhood you in. Because I've definitely been in some neighborhoods where a 911 call did not come in 5 to 7 minutes.
Well, you mean 5 to 7 days.
Right, exactly. Flavor Flav said 911 is a joke. So, but not in this situation, thankfully. So the authorities come and they get the guy, and he said that by the time the authorities came, he said he's going off because he said he didn't know if his kids were safe yet. His wife had to tell him that. And the guy is sitting there in the house, and the police have him, subdued at this point. And at this point now he's a different guy. And another part that really blew me, because he didn't know, Anthony Smith didn't know what was going on. The guy who did this name is Luke Haberstron or something. They published his name. So he's laying on the guy's back, and he asked him, he said, "Are you alone?" And the guy said, "No." And he says, "Who's with you?" And he said, so the guy just starts screaming out, "Luke, Luke." So so at this point, Anthony Smith doesn't know who this guy is, but the guy was literally calling out his own name. saying that he wasn't alone, that this person was with him.
Wow.
And so he's holding them down, and ultimately the authorities come, and he's like a different guy. And the guy's sitting down, and he walks past him, and he said the dude just looked up at him and said, "I'm really sorry, man." And he said it was just a bunch of emotions that went through him. He was like, he didn't know what or whatever to say. So you could tell he was like really still very shaken by the whole situation. And I just found it to be a fascinating situation. Obviously, it's horrible as a father standpoint. Like, that's like your worst nightmare.
Yeah, worse.
You know, that's the word, because as a father, your whole concept generally is you have to protect my family.
Of course.
And for somebody to put you in a position where you literally don't have a choice is just really amazing and just crazy. And so for him to have to now turn around and actually have an orchestrated fight a month later, something.
Well, yeah,
it really is. So just crazy. So
I have something to say.
I want to hear what you got to say about that. But it was a really, very few times as a story just completely like just grabbed me to the point where, I mean, the interview is 34 minutes. I watched every single second.
Right.
It was just crazy. So props to Ariel Helwani. He's fantastic at interviewing. He literally knows how to ask the question and just let the person go. He has a really good feel for when this person is just going to go, and he just lets them, you know.
Was that a dig at me, Brian?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't even remember any of your interviews.
Yeah, because you say I'm always talking over them.
Oh, well, no. Hey, see, why are you bringing backstage stuff to the front stage?
I just want to make Portia laugh again out loud.
Okay.
So here's what I have to say on this scenario. Okay. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't so much debate that you were looking for other than my thoughts.
Right. Just, I mean,
as a father of three, who has three boys, 18, 13, 11, not as little as Anthony's. And I have a mother-in-law under the roof, my wife, and my dog, Rocky. It's my responsibility to make sure everyone's safe. When I first heard the guy standing there screaming, my first thought was, who went and checked on the kids?
Yes. Yep.
Like, before charging him, I would wonder, where was he first before screaming?
Yes.
What did he do? So my mind would be racing. Then, you know, the first thing that came to mind, I know you think it's some sort of demonic possession. I'm thinking it's like bath salts. I'm thinking it's just some sort of drug that will make you, like we've seen, eat a man's face off or have some superhuman power, do things that you don't even remember. Whatever the case is. Crazy story, traumatic experience. I think it'll have zero effect on him doing his job tonight in the octagon. I don't think it'll even play into it. I think he's, like you said, or at least referenced to me prior to talking about it today, that for a guy that fights, he actually felt nervous. Whereas in the fights, he's not scared to fight because he fights. You know, he might be scared to lose, but he's not scared to fight.
No, never.
But these factors, when you change the environment from the octagon to your study or home office, it changes the entire scenario in which you're fighting it.
Changes everything. So
your training kicks in because it's second nature. So you're able to be effective, but the mind has to adjust to the environment and wondering what is going on. At least in a fight, you know what's going on. Your opponent's there. He's trained to fight you. It's a competitive sporting event. You're going to fight, and there's going to be defined rounds. You know the whole. You know the rules, and you know the time frame. And it's not a death match.
Right.
In this case, someone's invaded your home. You're there to protect your family. You don't even want to fight them.
You really don't.
What if you get hurt? Like, there's so many things, right? Like, who is this person?
The thing of it was, one thing I did mention, he said that it was really interesting that this was the night that this happened. He said, because 99% of the time, I go to bed with my gun and my nightstand next to me. He said, just this particular night, I did not have it there.
Hey, let me tell you something, though. Probably better off.
Right. Because,
what if he killed a guy? It might be, who knows?
Yeah.
This is definitely something that'll live with them forever.
Now you got to move.
This will never go away. However, I think that if anything, he'll be more comfortable being back in the octagon, doing what he loves to do, life back to normal, and having an opportunity to perform, earn money, move forward in his career. So I don't think it's going to have an effect, but for the viewers that aren't familiar, it's definitely an interesting, as Brian said, interesting side note story going into tonight as part of the narrative.
Absolutely, for sure. It's just, I really felt for him as a human being and as a father, as a man. I just felt for him, period. And he's a very interesting, different kind of a guy. He's not, when you think about fighters, when you look at him, he looks like a fighter. But when he starts talking to you, you're like, this is like an introspective philosopher, and I've always felt like that about him, because if you look at him when he's in like street clothes, or especially when he has on a suit and he wears these glasses, he looks like the Agent 47, the African American version of Agent 47, who is the main character in the Hitman video game. That's what he kind of looks like. So he's just a very interesting individual, but this was just crazy. I really thought it was, worthy of discussion right before his fight.